organizations or larger organizations where education is not the focal point of our work, but still a very important piece of it. But we wanted to dedicate this space today to talk about organizations that are more community-based and focused, and that are specifically focused in arts education work. So again, for everyone, I'm Lissa, the director of the DC Arts and Humanities Education Collaborative. Really grateful for you all to be part of this conversation today, to talk about organizational leadership and community programming in a time of social distancing. Oh, how many of us, there's so many new buzzwords in our life that between social distancing, unprecedented, pivoting, I think that's the P word now, oh my God. We all must pivot. We all must pivot, short-term pivoting, like having these daily Zoom chats. And I'm so grateful that the collaborative is able to provide these vehicles for us right now. That is what we are supposed to do as a collaborative. The other word is the C word, collaborate. That's a good one too. That's one we've been using for 22 years. And boy, we need to do it more than ever now. And also we have to break down all of the silos of our work and how we've worked together, even within our collaborative itself. So much is at stake right now for our youngest residents, their families and caretakers, and our cultural and community-based organizations. We have a lot of teaching artists I see on today. So I see if everyone can just introduce themselves as they already have on the chat. I want to be respectful and mindful of everyone's time. And indeed, Lauren, you totally win the backdrop. What is going on there? Is that curtains? That is so cool. I love it. That's yeah, that is awesome. Oh my gosh, we need to get more creative. I have a friend from Seattle who's an arts educator who I do want to introduce, Karen, if you're on, because she's also a bookmaker. She's created a frame with construction paper around her, like she's created a stage, and it's just like the most awesome thing. So every time she Zooms in, like for just a friend call, it's her stage for her kids, for students, and it's just so great. I love it. Okay, anyway, I digress.
I just want to say one housekeeping thing and let people know that we're being recorded. And that if you have any questions, please type them in the chat and we'll try to get to all of them. So thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Tracy. Sorry, I forgot my important housekeeping duties today. Sincerest apologies. So again, just really briefly talking about some of our organizational leadership in this time of change. I'll just be super brief. As many of you know, because you've been joining us on these Zoom chats, the collaborative immediately pivoted to how it can support our community and what was needed most. And we immediately got on the phone with our most key stakeholders being Mary Lambert at DCPS Arts, reaching out to the Charter School Board as well, asking what can we do for you? What do you need? And one of the things we knew immediately that was going to need to happen was getting distance learning materials out to students and families in some way and form. So the first thing we did was create the DC Collaborative online distance learning database, which now has over 100 unique learning opportunities from all of you, from our members. Broken down by discipline and grade band. We also have supplemental resources that are coming outside of the DMV. We also know through Google Analytics, we're getting about 400 users on average each day since we launched this. And they're coming mostly from the District of Columbia and DMV, but other parts of the country, Canada, the UK. This is also a way for us to showcase all of the amazing arts education learning that happens here in the district. And one day in the long term, when we think about what happens in the future, which the future is a hybrid of distance learning and direct experiential learning, others can come in and learn from what we're doing and really showcasing the District of Columbia in a big national way. We actually just had a conversation with our peers, our friends at Ingenuity, that's a Chicago-based organization similar to the DC Collaborative, and they're working with 6 different cities right now. We will most likely work with them in some way to look at how we're collecting this type of data and putting it out to families and caretakers, as well as working with the school system, looking at what is truly 24 hours of learning, not just during the school day, but also what equates to out of school time learning. And that's what we're going to focus on a lot in today's conversation. As leaders, we know it's been so hard to make these pivots. There have been unintentional setbacks that have forced many of our organizations to have to take a step back and furlough employees, lay off people. Everyone's heard about the big news that came out of Kennedy Center, which is just so sad and just so difficult for us to even fathom. We care so much about our education team there. I see that Anika is actually on the call, which is wonderful. So hello, Anika. We're thinking a lot about you in the Kennedy Center. Anika oversees our national collective impact work through the Any Given Child program. And we're thinking a lot about collective impact now more than ever. And it's really important for us to keep that in mind in the short term and long term, and just be very grateful and appreciative that we have the vehicle of the collaborative already in place. We may not get everything right to start, but we started really fast, and because we knew we needed to be here. So I don't want to take up too much more time, because we're happy to talk about all of the tools that the collaborative is developing, but we really want these platforms to be for our community to share out what learning they have, what they're experiencing, and how we can work together more on not only what's happening right now, but as we plan forward to even the summer and beyond. But let's talk first about what we've been working on now and what we need to do now in response to this pandemic. So I think on the agenda, we first had Maureen. Is that right? Did I screw up, Tracy? I'm sorry. I'm not looking.
Okay, Christy's gonna kick it off.
I'm so sorry. I don't have the agenda in front of me. I apologize. I didn't have my screen set up. Fail, sorry. So Christy Walser from Project Create, Executive Director Extraordinaire. Please introduce, yay. Everyone, do you guys know how to use the reaction buttons? We just did them last week. Let's all give her a round of applause.
Oh, jeez. Oh my gosh. I'm just the opening act for Maureen. Okay, I'm just the opening. That's what it is.
Okay.
All right, well, I'll just jump right in. I am Christy Walser. I'm the Executive Director of Project Create, going on 10 years. Project Create just opened an art center in Anacostia. We just purchased our building, which is super exciting. And we serve children, youth, and families experiencing homelessness and poverty in DC. We employ a number of art therapists, including our director of programs, who you'll meet in just a moment, and work with art as arts education and as a healing, a tool for healing. So in 2003, I finished a master's degree in public administration. And as you might imagine, my final paper was on crisis management during 9/11, and specifically on Bernadine Healy and the Red Cross and their response to 9/11. So that kind of was sitting in my little toolkit, an understanding of crisis management and how it works. And over 10 years at Project Create, I've certainly had some challenges throughout time, but nothing really compares to this in terms of just the impact and the enormity of the issue, and how to kind of recalibrate through it all. So on Sunday, before our center closed, so on the day before DC Public Schools closed, and we all went remote, I spent the day reflecting on how to work through this as a leader, and how to manage through it, and what are best practices, and how could I stay calm, focused, positive, directed, all the things that I knew that we would need as a team to get through it all. And I thought instantly that I really needed to set some goals for moving forward. And those goals really were pretty simple. So I went right back to basics. So our number one priority was our students, and continuing to serve the children and youth that we have long served and that rely on our services. So that was our number one goal. Number two which is on the minds of all of us as leaders, is how are we going to protect our staff? I think as an executive director, you're always, there are some sleepless nights thinking about how are you going to make your budget so you can keep everyone employed. That was my number 2 goal. And then number 3, something that Project Create has really placed a lot of value on is how can we continue to support our teaching artists? We work with about 40 teaching artists each year in DC, and we were committed and have been committed to continuing to pay them throughout all of this. We've seen a lot of teaching artists, we've heard stories of a lot of teaching artists whose income just instantly dried up and their gigs were canceled and so bottomed out. So we really wanted to figure out a way to stay connected and committed to supporting our teaching artists. So on Monday, our staff met for the last time in person, and we developed 2 plans. The first set was that we decided on what our internal remote work guidelines were. What are the things that we're going to stay true to as we work through this as a team? And the second thing that we developed right there on Monday was our distance learning plan. And that plan really was focused on how to continue to support our students and how to continue to employ and engage our teaching artists. And Dania, our Director of Programs, is going to talk about that a little later. So I'm going to share my screen when we talk about what our remote guidelines were. And I wish I could claim that all of this material is original, but I actually pulled from many sources. I didn't cite them because I was in such a hurry, but this was the document. Can everybody see it? Is it sharing? Okay. So this is the document that we kind of framed our meeting with, the initial meeting that we had. And you can see at the top a really cute little graphic about how to succeed as a remote worker. And so these, when I saw this graphic, I really liked it and identified with it. So we kind of set up our guidelines around this graphic. So right away, we articulated what are our shared expectations around accountability, communication, and accessibility. Like what are the things that we all really value and the things that we need from each other, and what are the things that we can commit to as individuals. So these were things that we defined right away, and we had a little check-in yesterday. Are these still our values? Are these expectations still things that we can commit to and promise to adhere to? And the answer was yes. So that was a good kind of confirmation. And then we talked about what is our remote work norm and how the same expectations apply in with remote work as they would in the office. If you wouldn't do it at the office, don't do it at home. So it's normal work behavior to take breaks, to go on walks, to play with your dog, to do what you need to do. Give yourself some time to, be a human being in light of all the remote work. And this this little last sentence here was not mine, but I liked it. It's not a workplace norm to binge watch Netflix at work or to be missing in action for hours at a time. So we sort of just, lightheartedly confirmed that, we're still working, we're still engaged, we're still going to be available to ourselves and or to each other. And obviously this is in the interest of continuing our work as an organization and continuing to adhere to the mission. So we talked about accessibility and availability, how to communicate availability, how to check in, how to schedule times when you're available and when you're not, keeping in mind that, remote work works the same. If you're sick, if you need a day off, you should feel free to take advantage of that. We talked about a remote work setup. What accommodations do we need? How can we continue to be productive? What are our work hours? When are our check-ins? We've been checking in every day at noon. We check in when we first sign on in the morning. We check in for an in-person check-in at noon, and then an optional Zoom meeting check-in later at 5 o'clock. We talked about how we schedule meetings with each other. We talked about communication methods to use. We sort of outlined the ones that we wanted to use immediately, and then the ones that we are kind of saving for as needed later on. And then the final thing we talked about was our workflow. How are we going to set goals for ourselves? How are we going to maybe eventually switch to project-based work? How are we going to report in? How can we be accountable? And how, as managers, are we going to check in with each other and with our direct reports? So those were the things that we outlined right from the start. And I think that set a great tone and a great structure from the beginning, that we all had something to bounce off of and go back to and reflect on. Everyone worked out in that same day. We worked out what our project-based goals were, you know, for the future, and we kind of listed them, and we have workflows and work plans so we can all be accountable to ourselves and to each other. So I have 1 minute left. I have a timer on. I'm going to stick to my 10 minutes. What are our lessons learned so far? We have a long way to go, and I feel like we're learning lessons. I'm learning lessons every single day, but here are the ones that kind of have emerged immediately. The first one is look around at your team. Look at your leadership team. If you're a small organization like ours, we have 4 full-time people. Look at them. If you're a manager of a larger team, an executive leadership team, look at those people. Who and what has emerged? What is reflected to you? The thing that I have noticed is what a positive can-do attitude that my team and our leaders have had. What has been revealed to me is how mission ready we are, how committed we are, how forward thinking the team has been, how adaptable, and that really sets the tone. I think the strength of your leadership team, and also reflecting on in the future, and when you're hiring in the future, like what are the qualities that you're going to look for in a team member, knowing what we know now, which is we have to be ready to be flexible, adaptable, resourceful, positive. So that's my first takeaway. The second is, and this is what my husband says to me all the time, and I just looked it up, and it's a quote from Voltaire, if you need to know that. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And that's something I think that we all struggle with, because we want everything to be beautiful and perfect and to look just the right way. But sometimes speed is good. Sometimes getting something out, even if it's not perfect, but connecting and serving your population is great, even if it's not immediately perfect. And then the last takeaway, which now I've gone over my time, my new favorite word, and Lissa said it earlier, is pivot. That's my word. So I think being flexible and adaptable. I love what the collaborative has done with the distance learning database, Jeff Pullen with Creative Generation and Keep Making Art. So many things have happened so fast. It really speaks to the ingenuity, creativity of our team, our population, and I'm so impressed, really. So in the end, yes, we are challenged, but we are all challenged. We're here for each other. We're working together. I have to say, Maureen has been such a great resource to me personally. I love texting with her and emailing with her and calling her. She's been a great sounding board and a great ally and friend and a mentor to me. So find your people, find the good ones, and good luck. The end. Sorry, I went over a couple minutes.
That's okay. And, yeah. And just acknowledging too that there are parents at home with small children also, and the DC Collaborative has thought about that already. And in addition to like doing some Zoom chats for self-care, we thought like parents can all talk to each other too at some point. So we'll be sending you yet another email about that. But Maureen, if you want to talk about your experiences and adaptations and pivots with Sitar, that would be great.
Hi, everybody. I'm Maureen Dwyer. I'm the Executive Director of Sitar Arts Center. I just really want to thank Christy for that awesome presentation. I learned a lot. I would love that sheet. If I can sheet and stick Sitar's logo where Project Creates is, I would appreciate it. I'll give you credit. But that sheet is really, really terrific. I kind of consider Project Create my soul sister across the city. I think that Sitar Arts Center and Project Create share very similar values and purpose. And for those of you who don't know, Sitar's mission is to provide transformational possibilities for children and teens in Washington, D.C., who have unequal access to those opportunities. And in our region, access is largely defined by income. So at Sitar, 80% of our students come from low-income households, which we classify as 50% or less of the median income. And as you can probably guess, the families at Sitar and at Project Create are feeling this crisis first and worst. Many of our families are immediately unemployed. Because of their status, not all of our families are eligible for unemployment. So it's an emotional and a challenging time, and Sitar's just tried to poise ourselves to take immediate action. When, you know, about 2 weeks when I started hearing the epidemic creep up, I sat down with my wonderful colleague, Angela Robinson, and she handles HR and operations at Sitar, and I said, I don't know what we need to do, but we need to do something to prepare for this coronavirus. You know, extra cleaning, you know, whatever. Just let's start to think through it. And luckily for me, she's brilliant, and she really started to think through it. And we started to develop with our other directors just what our plan would be. And we had a multi-phased plan. And then on Thursday, I guess, I forget the date. March was like 100 days. But early, you know, on the Thursday before DCPS closed, Sitar decided to call it because we were very worried about our faculty, some of whom are in the dangerous age, the more vulnerable age, or some of our staff had pre-existing health conditions. A lot of our kids have asthma. So we decided that you know, starting that Monday, we would be closed. We were thankful that DCPS made that decision shortly after, so we weren't alone in that. I'm just so impressed with the way our staff got up online. That was also Angie's real doing. She just got us, we have a staff of 24, most of whom do not work remotely because it's really hard to keep kids safe when you're working from home. And it was a big organizational shift from us, and we did it really quickly. And if you're needing any tips for that, please email me, and I'm happy to connect you with Angie because she's the one who knows how to do it. For those of my staff who's on today, this is going to be a little bit of a repeat because you've heard it a couple times, but there's a quote that's been really keeping me grounded through this, and it is by Desmond Tutu. He is, well, I think you all know who Desmond Tutu is. And he said prior to the pandemic, but not too long ago, we are living in a historic moment. We are each called to take part in a great transformation. Our survival as a species is threatened by global warming, economic meltdown, and an ever-increasing gap between rich and poor. Yet these threats offer an opportunity to awaken as an interconnected and beloved community. Here in South Africa, interconnectedness is described by the concept Ubuntu, Ubuntu is the philosophy and belief that our humanity is inextricably bound up in one another, and any tear in the fabric of connection must be repaired for us all to be made whole. This interconnectedness is the very root of who we are. And this interconnectedness is what is grounding me, Maureen. And my belief in the arts and what you all are doing is so essential. So thank you for what you do, because what's coming to the forefront now, we arts are always not considered the essential. We're considered the next in line, or the nice to have. But what's getting everyone through their day? Music, poetry, communication, painting, expression, television shows, which have all the arts wrapped up into them. This is what's bringing us hope and connectedness right now. So I'm very grateful for all that you're doing, and to Collaborative for all that you're doing to keep us interconnected. So like Christy, I came to the realization pretty early on that everything was changing constantly. This constant shift was very unsettling. So I wanted to ground myself and my team in some very clear goals that we could keep going back to. And because Sitar is people and is about people, people first was our goals. So they're not fancy goals. There's nothing that's going to surprise you, but the 4 overarching priorities I set for the next several months is: 1, to keep our staff paid and with benefits, and to keep our faculty paid as long as we can. 2, identify and fill mission-aligned needs for our families. Our family have needs. My first instinct was to feed everyone and find the money. Obviously, that's not Sitar's mission, so had to go back. What can we do that we do well as a mission to keep our families focused and aligned? 3, to continue to provide a sense of the Sitar community. That means consistently engaging and communicating with staff, board, leadership council, students, families, faculty, and donors. That's the hardest one. I'll go back to that. And then finally, you can't do any of this without money. So to ensure that we are grounded in financial stability so that we can immediately open for camp, if we can, goodness, I hope we can, and endure for the long term despite what is a guaranteed economic fallout all around us. So those are what I keep whenever I'm feeling unmoored. I go back to that list and I think, what can I do about that right now, today? So some of the things we have done, and I would recommend for those of you who are administrators, is I am keeping a live financial document that I update sometimes daily into terms of cash projections. Cash is king for me right now. You know, usually it's income as a whole and projecting out, and are we going to come out at the end of the day of the fiscal year? Right now it's just shoring up the cash so we can go back to that ability to pay our staff and our faculty. So my cash goals are much more short-sighted than usual, but I think that's essential. In terms of communication, I think that the Sitar team has come up with some brilliant ideas. Last night, we held our first town hall for parents through Zoom. It was amazing to see their faces and just to hear from them and talk with them and have them talk to each other. Today, we're having a town hall for our full faculty. And then on Monday, we're having a town hall for all of our financial supporters. And on Friday, we're having a town hall for all of our teen students. We don't want to be too prescriptive. We want to make sure our teens are contributing to the programming that we're rolling out in this interim time. We also are planning our distance learning. We launched it this week to kind of demo it. We had our first class on Monday. Miss Sylvia's on the call, her amazing teacher in our early childhood program offered a Bollywood class, which is, if you want to lift your spirits, watch kids do Bollywood. And then today we're opening a class for aftercare. We were postponed a little bit. Sitar has a lot of students and we want to really make sure that our learning can be equitable for them. So for the past few weeks, our staff has really been auditing our families to see that they have the technology they need in order to participate in the online learning. We're still in that process. As we're not prolonging the offering anymore, but as we learn from our families that they don't have what they need, we are getting it for them. We are figuring out how to get them what they need. So that's additional fundraising on our part as well. If we offer it inequitably, it just defies our mission. And I'm so worried about our kids right now with this prolonged not being in school and the learning lags, and where are they going to come out on the other end? If you look at other crises in the past, like Katrina in New Orleans, you know, those kids were so behind at the end of the day. I too had a timer set and realized that I'm at my 10 minutes. So I'll stop there. But I'd love to answer any questions either now or in the future. I really highly recommend a document I've been using regularly. My brilliant friend, Sarah Gibson, runs an organization called 20 Degrees, and she and her brilliant business partner, Tom Bartlett, have created a COVID toolkit. It's free. They did it out of love and compassion for what we are all facing as nonprofits. And it's on their website, 20 Degrees, and really outlines everything you need to do, from financial to communicating to event postponing. I've relied on it. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, we'll make sure to put that link in the Zoom chat. And I did have a chance to go on, and it is fantastic. And it has just about everything you imagine you would need right there. And the fact
a lot of it was from talking to people like me who are like, what do we do about this? You know, so she took all the questions from her friends and created a masterpiece. Mm-hmm.
It's fantastic. Thank you so much, Maureen, for sharing. Does anyone have any questions? I know we didn't have a chance to ask Christy any either before we get into switching gears from organizational leadership during social distancing to the actual community programming that's happening at both at Project Create and others. So anyone have any thoughts or questions they might want to share, or something that came in the chat?
Yeah,
I think equity.
a couple of questions in the chat.
Okay, I know that Lauren had asked about equity, and Maureen, both Maureen and Christy addressed that, and Maureen just most recently. And it's true, I loved the Voltaire quote, and that's one that I've heard different iterations of it, but that same idea, like we don't want perfection to interrupt the necessary progress that we need to make right now. And that's why when DC Collaborative made the quick pivot in creating that online database, we knew it wasn't going to be perfect, especially through an equity lens. And the DC Collaborative's mission, 3 words in, is equitable access to arts and humanities learning opportunities for our students here in the district. So we know that, and we are working on that. We're working on that with all of you. We have volunteers like Sylvia, who's offered to do some translating into Spanish. We have to think about students with all learning abilities. What does it feel like to be a parent or caretaker right now and helping students that have issues, different types of learning abilities that these platforms are not the best vehicles for them. Also, the economic impact. We heard from our good friends at Life Pieces to Masterpieces yesterday that their team is putting themselves at risk because they are getting out there to all 50 of their students that they work with to make sure that those students' needs are met. Some need technology, need computers, they need toilet paper, they need water, they need supports, their parents are working, they're home by themselves. There's so much more to what our work is about right now, especially as community-based organizations working with children and their families. It stretches beyond just opening your doors to the public or creating that public education programming. So we know that, and we really appreciate what our on-the-ground community-based arts organizations like Sitar and Project Create are what you're going through right now in identifying that equity concern. But we do know that we also have to move things forward and know that they're not perfect, but getting them right, and we will get there. Unfortunately, we do have time to do that because all indications are we're going to be doing our work this way and be home-based educators for some time. So we have to constantly think about that equity piece. And Lauren, I hope that answered your question. I think we'll have more opportunity for folks to talk about how they're incorporating more equity into what they can do. But I think we all need to understand that we have to get programming moving forward while we're concurrent to identifying those equity needs. And I think that our next set of speakers actually can help address some of that as well. Let's see, before we get there, Tracey, sorry if you don't mind helping me, I'm trying to scroll up. Were there other questions we missed? Oops.
I don't think so. I think Lauren's questions.
Yeah.
The only one.
One that I saw was back to the same question about technology.
Yes.
And obviously all of our families don't have access to technology. Many of them at least have access to their phones. And I understand that Verizon, Comcast, AT&T have lifted data limits.
Yes.
Which I think is probably helping a lot of families. And I know DC is working really hard to get kids technology so that they can do learning at home. So I guess for us, you know, in the absence of being able to kind of be out there doing it ourselves, we're relying on DC public schools and other organizations to help solve the, you know, technology access sort of crisis.
Yeah.
I think hopefully it's a reminder to us, or a harbinger of, you know, the idea that access to technology is not just a luxury. At this point, it's a necessity, and we need to treat it like that and make sure that everybody has access.
Absolutely. For so many of us that have been part of broadband and media reform for well over a decade, I feel that, I know from my previous work, it is so important, not just in our urban settings, but also in rural communities. This is a big issue. And then the hardware itself, you know, making sure that everyone is equipped with this. And this is something that the digital divide, as much as tech sector has said, we've created enough product for everyone to have access, is not enough. The digital divide is so apparent now. In a moment of crisis like this, it has not come together. And we have to do more and think more about when we come out, like short term now, getting those tools as much as possible. But when we get out of this, knowing that we will be living in a hybrid state for a while, because we don't know what happens. This may not just go away and burn off in the summer. It could come back. There could be other things. We have to make sure we're prepared, and that everyone has access to technology. It's going to be so important. It is a right. And when we look at our own respective Verizon or Comcast bills, we have to remember that these are incredibly costly tools that have not been regulated nearly enough. I am so thrilled to see that Nancy Pelosi is bringing back the net neutrality issues, because that's another factor. At some point, some of these folks, yeah, that is so important, net neutrality right now more than ever, because at some point, a lot of folks are going to continue and bring you back to being throttled or pay per play. It's so important for so many more resources to remain open and accessible. But firstly, we've got to get those tools in the hands of those that don't have it. And the collaborative is thinking a lot about this. And we can talk about this in another session, because we know that our next iteration of what we can do in service to our community is to talk to all of those service providers and to think about what does this mean for all of us and how we are able to serve our respective communities here in the district. So to be continued, but also know that it's something that is on our minds as we try to, again, not let the perfection interrupt the process. So to that note, I'd like to talk a bit more now about community programming and what actually has already started. So if our friends from Project Create can kick us off, I think Dania is here.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Dania and I am the Director of Programs at Project Create. And I'm gonna walk you through a bit of the narrative around how we came to pivoting into an online and virtual model of programming. The first thing that I want to start out by saying that closing our doors was one of the most difficult things that we had to do as a team. And it definitely took an emotional toll both on our staff and our teaching artists and our students. because more than just a space to create art, we were also a safe space where our students came and socialized and got to hang out together. And so that in itself was hard. And I think that all the steps that we took after were in an effort to minimize that lack of security and safety that was created by having to pause our programming. So we were very eager to find ways to continue to serve our students and to act quickly so that we wouldn't lose those contacts. Beyond programming at our studio, we also have community partnerships where we go out into organizations such as Community of Hope and Sasha Bruce Youth Work, and we provide programming on site. So we wanted to maintain our relationships with our students at our partner sites, maintain relationships with our students who were just regulars at our studio, and also continue to provide our teaching artists means to share their art, continue to serve our students as well. And so in an effort to engage everyone, we decided to take on a two-pronged approach. And again, this was our first iteration. It was just the first pilot phase. And so we thought of having online Zoom live classes for our older youth, or 14 and older, because we knew they were more in control of their time and their access to technology. And then for our younger classes and our community partnerships, we decided to create pre-recorded arts classes that we would then post onto our YouTube page. We wanted things to be easy. We didn't want to send long, wordy documents to our families. We wanted them to be able to click on a link and see a familiar face and engage in an easy activity. And so that was pretty much what our goal is. And every week, we plan on releasing videos. So for each class and each teaching artist that's contracted with us, they are now producing a pre-recorded workshop that we post on our YouTube page. So by the end of 1 week, we had 15 videos up. And that's 15 different art forms that our students can engage with. And so in order to get there, we needed to get the buy-in of our teaching artists. We need to figure out the technology. None of us are well-versed in the world of distance learning. We're all pretty much figuring this out as we go and trying to read up as much as we can as we go. And so we had to quickly draft guidelines. Given that it's distance learning, we're not even seeing our teaching artists face-to-face. We wanted to make sure that we were keeping those conversations going and that communication going. And so I can share, if I'm able to share my screen, I'll share what we drafted, which is just a really basic document that we used just to make sure that all of our teaching artists were on the same page, and that after our conversations with them, if they needed to revisit something, there was also some consistency in the way we were continuing to program. And so this is the Teaching Artist Distance Learning Guide that was put together. It has some technical stuff up here, but we pretty much divided it into pre-recorded sessions. So the basics of introduce yourself and introduce Project Create, to introduce your lesson, to keep it short. We try to keep our videos up to 20 minutes long because we know that sitting and watching a video of over an hour can sometimes be a bit tedious. And so we try to keep them short, to try to keep it simple. We wanted our teaching artists to just keep in mind that our students may not have the art supplies that we have at our studios at home. And we do wish we were able to provide each of our students with an art kit. Like, that's something that we all just talk about on a regular basis. And we're actually trying something out this week. To use visuals, we try to discourage our teaching artists from just talking at the camera and to actually show and engage our students in the art making process, and then some technical stuff to record in landscape, and to make it personal. And I think this is one of the most important ones for me and for our team, is that our teaching artists are, creating those contacts. These are teaching artists who our students see on a weekly basis. And so at least they still get that familiarity. They still get to see their faces and in a way interact with them. And then to encourage engagement, we're trying to work out a system where our students can then engage us and respond to the content and share their artwork with us. That's still a work in progress though. And then we have our live online sessions. And so we worked with all of our teaching artists on their tech needs, and also have worked with our regular students on how to get on a Zoom call, how to download the app, and all of those technical stuff. We talked about maintaining classroom rituals, that even if it's on Zoom, you know, maintain those rituals, do those things together, that to create a sense of containment in a time where they have lost all sense of routine. And then to allow time for students to socialize. In our first week of class, we found that 90% of the time was spent when our students were just catching up with one another and with the teaching artist. It was conversation, it was support, and there was art, but it was really just about, you know, finding ways to see each other's faces. And I can speak for myself that when I saw all their faces pop up on my screen, it kept me going, because it can be hard working behind a screen on an arts program and you're not even seeing the students. So that was really validating for me. And I do encourage, you know, other arts organizations to do that, to actually like turn on the video and see your students, because it's so important to keep that connection. And again, use visuals and keep it simple and encourage online engagement. And so these guidelines have helped us maintain consistency, because it's something that we can share with our students, with our teaching artists, and it's something that they can continue to refer to. It is a living document. It's already been edited a couple of times. We've added new things. We've removed some things that didn't really make sense. And I do have to credit like our amazing team of teaching artists and our staff, because they all bought in right away. And if you visit our YouTube page, which I'll also share the screen to show you, you'll see the quality that they have provided, which has been something that has really impressed us as a staff. They've been so responsive, and they've all just really been eager to contribute to supporting our students in this way. So you can see we have 15 videos here. And yeah, so each of our teaching artists that would teach a class is now featured here. You can see your favorite teacher. I know that seeing a familiar face that has brought our students and our children security can also kind of, we hope, replicate that sense at home. And yeah, so it's definitely a work in progress, and it's not perfect just yet. I'm a person who really likes to plan things, and so this has been out of my comfort zone because we've had to respond so quickly. So yeah, and we are continuing to engage in these sorts of conversations with other arts organizations and trying to chime in and also listen into different community conversations about this, because that can really help inform how we adjust and continue to refine our model. And so I'm going to stop there, but thank you all for listening.
Wow, thank you. For someone who is a perfectionist, I have to say, it looks pretty perfect to me. That was amazing setup. So bravo, bravo, bravo. It's so true. It's so important for you to see and stay connected to your students, but for them to see your faces and have those videos and that continuity, and keeping as much to the normal schedule of how you interact and engage is so important right now. That's what's so important for little ones, for all of us. We need that sense of normalcy as much as possible as we adapt and change. But that YouTube channel you have set up already is incredible. We'd love to be able to include that in our distance learning portal as well, and showing that as a great benchmark of how to do this. In fact, we should create a space on our distance learning portal that is a how to do, and we can use both Project Create and our friends at Sitar's information resources right there, because this is such helpful info for many of us that know how to do our work but are so overwhelmed right now and just can't get it together, and that's okay too. I think that right now is about sharing and being collaborative. We at the collaborative do this every day. So for us, it's very natural. We know for some that aren't always working and connecting completely with community, but I know as the arts education community, we are pretty connected. It still can be a challenge. So to share this information with others, and of course, please give credit to those that have done this great, awesome work, whether it's Sitar or Project Create or yourselves. Let's just share. In fact, speaking of sharing, again, this session, which is so good, is being recorded, as all of them are. Tracey has put the link up on the side. Also, we know that some funders are going to be tuning into this particular program. So I share that only because we know that the funding community is also trying to meet all of the needs and figure out and pivot themselves how they do their work in this space and in this unprecedented time. So everyone's in this together right now. Let's now pivot back to our next guests. Loretta and Megan, who are going to share some of the community programming in real time and what's happening right now over at Sitar.
Hello, everybody. I'm not sure how much time we have left. I'll try to speak quickly.
We can go over if that's okay for folks. We're fine with that. So yeah, keep going.
What you're doing at Project Create is awesome. Yeah, so when Sitar closed, I think that we were, hoping that it was going to be very short, that we would only be gone for about 2 weeks. So we were not thinking that we would have to do any type of online classes or anything, but I think a couple of days in, a lot of great ideas started to pour in about how we could connect and possibly start to have to provide some type of online classes. Miss Sylvia had some great ideas. I started to think of some things. Miss Lorraine Robinson started to have ideas about trying to provide some online arts classes for students. And then Maureen started to also, she had some really great ideas as well. So we started to think about how we could potentially do this. And then a lot of the other thoughts came in about how it could be equitable for our families and how to do that, which is when we started to have the thought of communicating with our families to find out how this could work for them. So we decided initially to do the town halls that we put together first, and to make phone calls to figure out who had the access to programming, so that we could roll out classes that would make sense for our families first. And then Miss Sylvia was working very tirelessly to gather together all her ECA teachers to see who would be willing and able to teach some ECA classes, and was able to pull together a Bollywood demo with Miss Suchi. And while she was pulling that together, Miss Lorraine was also communicating with many of our arts after school teachers to see who was available and willing to teach. While all this was happening, we're also talking with some of our staff who also teach with our aftercare teachers and our teens to see who was willing and able to, while they're doing their regular work, was also willing to do some online teaching. So within all this, I love that you also created your guide. We're in the process of creating an online teaching guide as well. So I will credit anything that I borrow there from you. So really, really depending on and working with all of our amazing staff to pull all this together. So some people are working on a guide, some are, engaging with staff and faculty. Miss Angie is working with Zoom to try to help us to figure out how to pull these classes together in a way that really looks very professional and that's easy to use for all of our families. So the way that this is happening is basically this week here, we did, as Maureen stated, 2 classes that are basically like demo classes to see how things work. So the teachers for our demo class, they received a link, and so they could just click on that. It went out to all of the ECA families. For the aftercare class, so some of this is trial and error. And as you all are saying, our new word is now pivoting. to see how things are changing and making adjustments. So the way that today's class will work, we actually sent out a very nice email that had a description of what the class was, that had a link that allowed them to register for the class. This way we could tell how many students were interested in attending in advance. The class also came with a description of materials to gather in advance, because it's an arts class, and all of our arts classes, as per your document, also explains basically the arts classes have to, the materials have to be things that can be gathered from home. So we're not expecting these to be all painting classes that require students to have paint and paintbrushes and canvases in the house, because we know a lot of students don't have those items. So everything is very found object based, paper plates and plastic forks, or tissue boxes and toilet paper holders and things like that. So things that are very creative, using things that can be found. A lot of music classes and dance classes. We're trying to work with figuring out how we can do instrument-based classes. If students don't have instruments at home, how we can figure out how to make that work as well. Next week, we will hopefully roll out about 10 classes, some that are about 5 that are ECA classes, and another 5 that are between elementary through high school. Some of those are, again, they're a mix between music, dance, and art classes. One of those classes is a teen class, so there's a very socialization-based program. So it's mimicking the class that we had for our teens, where they kind of just came together and socialized, and they talked about current events, and some of it was about learning about financial management and character-based learning, and so they're being able to like do that in a virtual space. But I think a lot of it will just be a lot of catching up. But it also is being opened up to all of our teens at Sitar. So if they're looking for a space to just reconnect and socialize, we're creating a space for our teens at Sitar to be able to do that. Our aftercare program, we're creating some aftercare classes for our elementary students and for our middle school students, so that they also can have this space to socialize, to reconnect, and to do some arts-based learning if that time allows, but we're really focusing on that socialization piece. So for next week, the way that we'll roll out is we're not doing it on YouTube as Project Create is doing. What we're doing is sending out an email to all of our Sitar family, and then they can sign up for whatever they want to do. So all of the classes are available to any student based on the grade level or age that they are, and they can just register for whatever they want. They can take unlimited classes. If they are eligible for 8 classes based on their age, they can take all 8 classes next week if they want to. So we're just trying to make things as accessible as we can, trying to find out still if they have the devices that they need and the access to the internet, and getting that to them if they need it. We're still communicating with families throughout the week to find out if we need to access things or get things to families. And we're still continuing to work through the programming, the software that we're using. Angela Robinson is working on some programming software so that we can more easily allow families to register for classes, and potentially allow them to register for classes that are instead of on a weekly basis, they're registering for these classes on a monthly basis, depending on how long we will be at home and teleworking and doing online classes. So we're looking at how extensive this needs to be and how prolonged these classes are going to be, and making things more simplified for families so they don't have to every week register for a class or sign up for a class every single week, so they can sign up one time for the month, but not making it stringent so they don't have to, that is not only up on this particular day, and if they miss it, that they're out, that they can, when they see it, if they don't see it till 2 weeks later, they still have the ability to sign up if there's still space in the class. What we've been also trying to do is make sure they're working with, aligned with our grant programming so that we can take attendance, we can track participation, so we can see who's signed up. So we're trying to make sure that we're checking all the boxes in a sense, to make sure that we're aligned with a lot of different things.
Thanks, Loretta, for sharing that. One question I would ask, yes, first of all, bravo, and bravo to Sitar. Keeping your community together right now is such a challenge, and I think that continuity, again, is so important for families to feel that connection with you all, is needed more than ever. So, and you've really put this together very quickly. It may not feel like it, right? But it is very quickly pulled together. One of the things that our good friend and our largest funder, Mr. David Markey over at the Commission on Arts and Humanities, does like to talk about, that is impact and measuring impact. And you had brought up that for donors, you are able to track some key things like audience participation of the students. How are you guys thinking about, if you haven't started yet, that's okay too, but how are you all thinking about measuring impact with these programs? And what does that even look like now? I think this is a whole separate conversation for us, for sure.
We're not there.
Yeah.
We're not there. I mean, maybe we can figure out, you know, how to do a survey or attach a survey to our YouTube channel and ask people. Maybe we can link to it as people watch videos, we can get responses. But yeah, that is not something we, right, Dania? I mean, I think maybe soon.
Hopefully soon. I think that's our next, it's the next project that we'll work on.
Yeah, it is the next logical step, but there's so much we need to do to start. How about Loretta? How about you all at Sitar? The same?
Yeah, I think it's about the same. I think that we're trying to respond to what happens once we roll out the classes and see after a couple of weeks of having these classes, and then we can, the same, I think, roll out another survey and ask the families some questions relating to how these have impacted how things have happened. I think one thing with the classes, some response that we've gotten is that they're getting a lot of screen time. So trying to respond to that as well with getting them some arts programming that doesn't pack on more screen time for them. So how to do that in the virtual world.
Well, we have to address our Maslow needs chart first, and measuring impact is not in the place where we need to be at the moment. So I think we're all doing a really good job.
Yeah, can I add something, Lissa?
Sure.
I think something, and this is my administrator coming out in me, not my artist, but so Sitar's aftercare program, we have 2 lines of programming during the school year. One is aftercare, and that's a small group of 40 to 50 kids who come every single day. And then across the week, we have, you know, another 150 students who come for the classes they're enrolled in. For our aftercare is very specifically funded by the 21st Century Learning Program. And we are trying, the reason we're having that registration, we're trying very hard to track attendance so that we can demonstrate to that funder, yes, this is reimbursable, we are engaging, because all of the expenses are reimbursable. So I would just encourage, when you're thinking about programming, if you have specific project programming, try to align some of your planning and your outcomes towards what you committed to with that funder, because especially if it's reimbursable, that will help you recoup the costs down the road.
Absolutely. And we also know that our friends in the philanthropic community are in similar position, rethinking what they can do in service to community right now too. So it's a pretty fluid process, but keeping in mind what our original funding connection is and why we're doing the work is important, and to do it the best we can. I think that there's going to be a lot of understanding there too. And Sylvia, as you said, starting with interest and number of participant measures a lot in our current needs situation here and how we engage with our families and our community. I want to give a little more airtime to our friends at Sitar and check in with Megan. Were there some other things that you wanted to share?
No, I was really just here as a reference to summer camp, if there were summer camp questions. But it seems like we're kind of running out of time, so there's no need
I think we should have a separate conversation about summer camp, because that's a moving target right now for sure for so many of us, and it's so thorny. For many organizations, it's so important for the students, so important for the families. It's going to be so disruptive if that does not happen for so many reasons. And also it's for some organizations, the real, if you will, bread and butter of your budgets. So much income and expense come out of your summer camp programming. So I think what we should probably do, if everyone's in agreement, is set up a separate conversation about summer camp. But I want to just field some more questions from everyone here. We have time, so we can keep rolling. It's up to everybody, because this has been such a good conversation, and I am so appreciative to our friends at Sitar and Project Create for your leadership and truly being exemplars in our community and sharing all of this with us. I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to share questions. Yes, applause. I love these reaction buttons. I wish there was a heart. I can't type a heart emoji fast enough in the chat. Anyone else have questions for our friends at Sitar?
So did you say that you're using for your classes, you're using something other than Zoom? Loretta, what was you're working on some other software?
We are using Zoom right now for the classes, and the classes will be live. So all of our classes will be live. That was the feedback that we received from majority of our parents, that they wanted live classes. We are recording them so that we potentially can post the link so that they can click on that when they are available to participate at another time. We are looking at a booking software so that we can track and all the classes that we are going to have available, so that the families can then basically register for the class that they want through the booking software, so it'll make it easier for me and the staff to track all of the classes that we're having throughout the week or throughout the month.
What is that software, Loretta?
I can probably send that to you later. I think we're trying some things out, and I think we may have found one that works for us. That seems to works for some studio spaces, like studio spaces. And I can send that to you.
Yeah. Also, if you could please share that with the community, because I know that's going to be a big question coming up.
Yeah.
The collaborative we basically have we created our own version of what would be like booking software for when we coordinate all of the field trips. It's essentially a massive Google sheet that has a lot of filters, and it's very complicated, but it works for us. But more of us now are going to need to develop those types of tools, because this will become our new norm for sure.
We just signed on to ASAP. If you ever attended the Guild conferences, they're always vendors.
Yeah.
So we bit the bullet and switched over, and Dania's been working really hard to get us up and running. Dania, do they have a way to host live classes through ASAP or no?
I don't think so, no. It's just a class registration and like events for sales of tickets and stuff, but I don't think they have an online hosting option.
If anyone, oh, sorry, Sylvia, I just want to ask really quickly, if anyone has a great platform for music, we're finding with Zoom there's a delay, an audio delay, so especially we want our band to rehearse, and
I was just going to say exactly that. I think Loretta and I also asked Simon to try Kazam. Apparently it's a platform in which you can play remotely, and there isn't such delay inside, so you could group play, but we are still trying. So Kazam, if anybody wants to try, and let us know how it works.
If you hear of any, Lissa, if you'll send it out to them, I think a lot of people could benefit.
Yeah, I'll put some feelers out also to my professional music friends, because musicians have been creating music in the digital space for a while and
Right.
composing and coming together. So I'll put a feeler out. I'll just do a little pulse survey with a lot of my music friends and see what some of the tools they're using right now. And most likely, because of being scrappy musicians, it's probably free or cheap resources. So yes, so we'll see what we can find from the professional community too. But dance is difficult as well, and syncing up sound, indeed. I think or choral music, anything where we have to do group dynamic activity is challenged and compromised in this space, and we'll do our best to keep our ear to the ground, as well as if you hear something, let us know. This makes me think that our distance learning database also needs to have an expanded tab for these types of very resources. Eventually we want to migrate all of us to our member clicks and all of the opportunities that we have there. We also have listservs, but I think having these resources parked in a place would be a great thing. So Tracey and I'll take that back to the team, and we probably can create another tab. And I think that would be really helpful, where you all can input and share what you find and what we find, and we'll just create one place for it.
You're gonna have like 5,000 tabs.
Yeah, I know. We're gonna have to create something different very soon. That's also why it was good for us to talk to our friends in Chicago with Ingenuity to see what they're doing and what folks are doing across the country, because it's like a Proustian novel. It's just unfolding in all these ways. So it's becoming really complex, what the types of information we need to share, and we want to make it as clean as possible. But we'll get there. Yeah, maybe we'll be on tab 4009 by tomorrow. We'll see. But we want to make sure we have all that info for all of us as we're learning through this process. Any other questions? Well,
Lissa and Tracey, I just would say thank you for bringing us together and creating this community right now. It's so welcome. And we're so, if I keep saying this too, like, we're making lemonade out of lemons. And I think that right now if there's anything good, it's that we have a chance to really kind of reflect on some of these opportunities and new ways of teaching. So it did force the issue, but hopefully we can make the best out of it and really strengthen our organizations.
Exactly.
If I can second, yes, my gratitude. I know you two are working so hard, and I think this crisis illustrates one of the reasons why the collaborative needs to be. So if you need those quotes for your funding, please let us know.
Yeah.
But also, I think that, our next step at Sitar, our future step, is to get more into workforce development for older youth and young adults through the arts. And we'd already been hearing from employers, creative thinking is the #1 lack in their workforce. And so I think I would not be surprised if arts organizations, who are probably being hit harder than this by anyone, especially our peers who are ticket revenue driven, I still think there'll be a stronger survival among arts because of the creative thinking, and because this is what we teach. So we are teaching our young people to think creatively, and through a crisis, and whatever the world's going to look like post-crisis, we're going to need the creative thinking that the arts ensure a young person develops. So again, to all of the educators, thank you. Yes. Your work is essential. And if anyone tells you differently, send them to me.
That's right. We've got a whole group that's ready. We've got our
That's right.
Ready. Yeah, thank you so much, Maureen and Christy, and everyone that's on today. Again, we recorded this session. This was such a good session. Thank you so much to our friends at Sitar and Project Create. Let's all give them love, applauses, hearts, thumbs up, all we can do, yay. Something that came up on the chat that I think is really interesting, and since, I know we're all super busy and stretched, but we do have time too. Maybe in a couple of weeks, we can have the same conversation again with our same guests and see how you're doing and see what's going on, and maybe some of the lessons learned. I think that would be really cool. Is that good for you guys? Sitar, yes. Project Create, yes. Good for everyone? Okay. we will follow up with our friends at Sitar and Project Create, and then we'll circulate something. We'll figure out what the right timing is, and maybe it's 3 weeks, whatever, but we'll come back and have this very conversation and just see how it's going and some things that we've learned along the way as this continues to shift and evolve. So, oh my gosh, I've got goosebumps because this really is so significant. I think that this is the silver lining in this horrible cloud right now. The work that we're able to do together and come together and share and support each other, knowing that our resources will most likely be dwindling or new resources are going to force to be opened as a result. And Maureen, you know, leaving it on that note, as you said, thinking about creatives and how that is so important and what our future workforce will look like and what it needs, we already know, and we're not there yet, but this is a great opportunity for the kids that don't have all of the best opportunities to have these resources and be ahead of the curve. And maybe that divide changes in a different way for them, thanks to you all and what you're doing. So thank you again. This was an incredible session. We will have a follow-up. Tracey?
Just one more thing. So if you want to sign up to lead a topic within kind of our buckets, or there's open forums on Tuesdays, and some of them are kind of broad. I'll post the forum here. We also have lists. Oh, I keep sending it to Anika privately. I'll post the forum here, and yeah, we also have listserv. So if you want to keep talking about program development, especially distance learning, we can do that in between calls too. So thank you guys so much.
Tracey, where should we, if we want to share resources, where should we do that?
So if you want to share resources that would go in the distance learning resource database, you could share them with Trey and I. If you want to share resources in like the community of practice listserv, we will capture that and put it into the distance learning resource database too.
Okay.
So
we need to make that tab first. We create the tab, but
create the tab.
We got to create the tab.
You have to have a tab.
And then pick anything out from the listserv and put it on there. Or we'll have to talk to Trey because he is the architect of that whole site. There might be a way to just put your programming right into that, or put your resources into that site too.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. But we know it's important, and we want to share your generosity in sharing these templates, because I can see many of us need them. And again, I ask everyone on the line, if you use these resources, please credit Project Create and Sitar for starting to develop them, because they did the heavy lift for us. And they're really so well done. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, well, for those of you that we see on the regular, we will be back at 11 a.m. tomorrow. What's on tomorrow's schedule, Tracey?
Our school partnerships manager, Clarissa, is going to be talking about equity. She's also our point of contact on the equity committee for any given child. So she'll be giving the update on where we last were pre-corona with the equity and access committee, and then also share what she's kind of hearing from teachers in responses to the teacher needs assessment survey. So that will be tomorrow at 11. And all of these are recorded. I'm a little behind on the notes, but Kelsey is on the line taking notes, and we'll get them up on the website soon. So
yeah, so everyone give Kelsey some love. She's our amazing intern who's working on all of this and getting all of this information out to everybody. So Kelsey, we love you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Great conversation. To be continued in a couple weeks. And we might see you tomorrow. Be well. Bye.